Hello and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Wednesday, September the 24th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, BC. I'd like to begin by thanking our great volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes it all happen. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack Show. So Walter, I'll start off with climate change. Just because there was a walk this past week, I think probably millions of people around the world focusing on climate change. To me, there's so many crazy things happening that it almost passed unnoticed. But I wrote a few things down, and as I said, if I don't write them down, I won't remember what I want to say, so I got to read it. So I think what we're seeing is a massive poisoning of our planet and ourselves and everything else by us. You know, we've got Fukushima, which is a huge nightmarish disaster that is never mentioned in the media. We've got Mount Polley, which happened, here in our own province, is an environmental disaster. We've got ocean acidification. We've got genetically contaminated foods. We've got nanotechnology. We've got fracking. We've got all of us polluted with dozens of poisons. And to me, thinking about it, it's just disappointing that we humans have done so poorly, and we're destroying our planet and we can't seem to stop. And we're all to blame, but I'd say that our pathetically corrupt corporations and politicians and big media, they're even more to blame. And I don't know if human civilization is going to survive this mess we're in. But I guess we're going to move ahead and see. I don't know.
Sometimes they kind of get confused about what are we trying to save? Are we trying to save our civilization, or are we trying to save the planet? We think that what we call our civilization is something that we really have to protect. I'm looking at that saying, not so much so. I'm not that concerned about cell phones, all the modern gadgets. We could, consumption of mass media, automobiles, is that our civilization? Do we really want to preserve all that stuff? I'm not that concerned about that. So if the motivation is to sort of just save our level of consumption or something, it's a really misplaced motivation. On the other hand, if you want to protect, conserve species and reduce the amount of extinctions that are going on, and try to keep a natural balance on the planet so that it might go on for many, many more thousands of years, and humans can live on it. I'm in on that.
Yeah, me too. That's what I should have said. Yeah, it's protecting the planet.
Yeah. So do I have a topic now?
You do?
Okay. I brought in, I think I want to talk about something that just happened last week, and maybe Sharon Noble's going to touch on it later, but the BC Human Rights Tribunal has allowed a submission from the Citizens for Safe Technology. There's a group of people in British Columbia that are concerned about the exposure of humans to electromagnetic radiation.
Especially from smart meters.
Particularly from smart meters. And the Human Rights Commission, or Tribunal, has denied the Citizens for Safe Technology hearing.
So what was the hearing about? Were they saying it's, because this is a human rights tribunal?
Well, basically they were saying that because this type of radiation that's emitted from smart meters actually adversely affects health, that's a violation of their human rights, and people that have, especially those who are diagnosed as having electrohypersensitivity.
So people are saying that because this technology is inherently dangerous, it's a violation of our human rights to force us.
To force them to use the technology. It's not like having a cell phone or other types of technology that emits radiation. This is forcing people to have to attach this type of technology to their homes, and it adversely affects their health. Now, the Human Rights Tribunal has turned down that application, and they're not going to allow it to go to a hearing. And so I looked into the tribunal, like, who the heck are these guys? Well, number one, they're all appointed by the BC government, by the the cabinet and the premier.
And really, which means they're appointed really by Christy Clark.
That's
She's
right.
the queen of this province.
Well, so the Human Rights Tribunal really is not an unbiased sort of forum to go to. I mean, you can see how easily that could be gerrymandered. So I looked a little further. Myself and someone else looked at the members on the tribunal, and lo and behold, the person that ran basically ran the file of the EMR file for the Human Rights Tribunal was appointed by the Liberals in 2010 or 2011, soon after the rumors were that the Citizens for Safe Technology were going to come to them with a complaint, and this particular fellow was a big-time corporate lawyer representing all the big corporations and all that. So basically, he took over the file and made sure that it wasn't going to go anywhere. So it was terribly
Allegedly.
unfair. It was an injustice, and it's just another indictment for the type of government that we're seeing right now, where they are just doing the bidding of large corporations. They're just puppets, really, Jack, and they're just part of the system. Unfortunately, they're just people that have to, interface with the population and catch the flack.
Yeah, in a democracy, we citizens are supposed to be running the show. Our government is supposed to be working for us.
Yeah.
But in British Columbia and Canada in the year 2014, our governments and the politicians have been completely taken over by giant corporations, and they're working for them.
Yeah.
Which means basically that our democracy is completely gone. That's fascism. When the government works for the corporations, that's the definition of fascism. And we can see it all around us now. There's nowhere left to run. I mean, it used to be, even 20, 30, 40 years ago,
Yeah.
you can't get away. They're poisoning our food. They're poisoning the planet. They're forcing these things onto our house. They're creating wars everywhere. I mean, the coastal communities here are under attack by the BC government with the ferries thing. They're trying to destroy the coastal communities. To me, that's what it's all about. I mean, they want to privatize the ferries as well, but I think the coastal communities are getting in the oil companies' way and the gas companies' way, because they don't want pipelines and they don't want oil tankers. So let's destroy the coastal communities, and that's what Christy Clark is doing. She doesn't work for us, and this is a huge problem. We need a Canadian Spring. I mean, look what these lunatics have done to the Arab Spring, but we need a Canadian Spring to get out from under these people.
Really, I think what's important, and of any role that I can play and you can play in having these discussions every week is to point out how it works, just how the injustices happen. Another example was, and we brought this up before, when there were rumors that people were going to go to the Ministry of Education and appeal to the deputy minister not to allow Wi-Fi in schools, because again, it's another exposure for children to a very harmful type of radiation that's well known, and perhaps to accommodate some students and some parents. So what did the government do? They appointed a TELUS executive and he became the Deputy Minister of Education. So nothing's going to happen there. They don't leave anything to chance. They'll just put their corporate representatives right into the portfolio, and then these parents come and appeal to these people.
Appealing to TELUS.
It's just, and this is, we got to talk about that, Jack. I mean, that's the important thing for what we can do, is that this is the nuts and bolts of how democracy is being stolen away from us. This is how it works.
And if somebody says, gee, I didn't know that a TELUS executive was put in place as the Deputy Minister of Education, that's because the same corporations also own all the media. And the media's job is to make sure we are as far out of the loop, as uninformed, as uneducated, and we've got to overcome it. Because, as I said, there's, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like we're getting into late innings here, and things, is the economy do we have the kind of economy we want? I mean, do we have house prices? Why are house prices the way they are? It's not by accident, and it's not because things have to be that way. It's because the people who run the country are making fortunes out of this.
Yeah.
And that's the way our whole country is now run for corporate profit. We're just their slaves. And if we can't get out of it, they're killing us. They're gonna destroy everything.
Well, I think you'd call us mortgage slaves, because that's why the house prices are so high. You have to take mortgages, and then of course the banks make a lot of money on that deal, and we're just on that wheel. We have to stay on it in order to live in our own homes.
ISIS. I think what I'd like to say is that don't believe anything that the corporate media is telling you about ISIS. You just can't trust them. I mean, I don't know what games are being played, but it looks like they're trying to get, because what I'm reading on the internet from what I consider to be very good sources is that ISIS was started by, trained by, funded by, run by the government of the United States. The people who run the United States created ISIS. And if that's the case, maybe I'm wrong, but if that's the case, what are they trying to do? Because they're creating this great enemy, just the way they did with communism, just the way they did with Vietnam. And they're trying to start a war. I mean, they are starting a war. It's absolutely insane.
It's a hard one to figure out, because the scenarios there could be several scenarios. It's very troubling to see developments where, the United States is bombing the heck out of Syria right now. That's what's happening, and the Syrian government seems to have to allow it to happen. It's not in collaboration with the Syrian government, and Israel just shot down a Syrian fighter jet over Syria yesterday. What is that all about? It really is troubling, because it doesn't make any sense in so many levels. And you wonder, well, what is the end game? And I guess probably wars are being fought for just to have a war. That's the name of the game. You build weapons, you got to find some place to get rid of them. And you have all these armies, you got to have something to do with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. But I think, well, we're going to see what the plan is, because what the plan is what's happening in front of our very eyes. That's the plan.
Yeah.
They keep telling us, it's, I mean, if you go back 20 or 30 years, you can see the way the United States manufactured, and I don't mean the people of the United States, but the corporations that run the United States and the world have manufactured this entire thing to bring us to where we are today. And it seems like the next step could be false flag attacks in North America. And once those happen, then of course, what's next? Martial law? The removal of the democracy that they tell us we have, but we're not going to have it anymore. I mean, how far are we? I mean, we've already lost it, but you just get the feeling that it's going to get worse.
Yeah, it's a national security state. That's the United States. Canada's just a satellite of that. In some ways, we're even more in favor of going into wars than the United States, and it's strange because I don't think our values are that at all, and I think Stephen Harper and the decisions he's making are totally wrong, and we don't have to be drawn into these conflicts, and this all-out sort of support of Israel at all costs. We're not looking at any of the alternatives for negotiating peace. basically just buying into a full-on propaganda model that the Israeli government is using, that a lot of people in Israel don't even buy into. So, you know, Canada is in the Harper regime right now are an embarrassment around the world for us, and certainly we're looked at it around the world as not. We don't have the prestige we used to have.
How does this guy do it? I mean, how does the prime minister of what's supposed to be a democratic nation run around like a king and do whatever he wants without any care or any consultation for the people of Canada? I mean, we have to admit that, I mean, we just don't, this isn't a democracy.
No.
When the prime minister, this nobody, well, who is he? He was put in place by corporate Canada. They put him in place to do exactly what he's doing now. He's not the prime minister of this country. He's a pathetic insult to this country, and we can't stop him.
He's also meddling, like he meddled in the BC politics for the last election that, you know, was really a corrupt election in British Columbia. Also in Alberta, used more or less the same formulas there to get rid of Alison Redford, and they have Jim Prentice there, which is, you know, federal, conservative, Harper, right-hand man. So, you know, they have control in Alberta. I mean, they're reaching out here. And, you know, it's all bad news as far as I'm concerned, just the level of meddling that they're involved in. And all this foreign policy stuff is really so jingoistic. And it really, you know, it obviously favors large corporate interests, which are very heavily tied into the war industry. It's just the way it is.
Like, for example, was it New Brunswick or Nova Scotia? Just a couple of days ago, where was the election?
Oh, in New Brunswick.
Yeah, the Liberals were voted in because they opposed fracking.
Yeah.
Now, when this kind of thing happens, the corporations are saying, well, yeah, we don't want that. These fools are opposing fracking. They're going to stop us. We can't have that. So let's see what the future brings. You know, they don't want. The people of BC are opposed to fracking. The people of BC are opposed to these pipelines. You can't have that. They're going to start doing to us what we did, not we, but the American government did throughout Central and South America. They put dictatorships in place, and they basically massacred the people who tried to oppose them. And we shouldn't think this can't happen here. It happened in Germany, a very civilized country, you know, a couple of generations ago. And if you look at who funded that, it was the same people.
You always have to be vigilant about these things because it's a slippery slope sometimes. Another good thing that happened in New Brunswick was a Green member of the legislature was elected, and his name was David Kuhn. And basically, he ran against a very high-profile conservative minister of energy and mines, or whatever they call it, pro-fracking minister, and he knocked him off. So not only did you get, you know, anti-fracking premier, but you also got a Green Party member in New Brunswick, which is historic and I think very important.
You know, talking about Greens, Andrew Weaver was being interviewed on CFAX, I think today or yesterday, and the host made the comment, I think I'm getting the words right, but the host said, you know, the only trouble is when you hear the word green, you think of eco-terrorists. I thought, what kind of absolute nonsense is this? But that's what CFAX says now. Green equals eco-terrorist. You know, CFAX is really like, to me, it's just a corporate infection in our city.
Yeah.
We've got, I don't care if CFAX is there, but there's got to be another station. There's got to be somebody telling the truth. You know, there's got to be somebody working for the people. I mean, CFAX is owned by Bell Media. CFAX works for corporate Canada.
You know, the NDP are in favor of fracking. I don't know. I think the Greens are opposed, the provincial Greens are opposed to hydraulic fracking. Do you know?
I hope so. I don't know. It's true, the NDP supports fracking, but they want cleaner, gentler fracking.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing, if you look at it, when I was in New Brunswick this summer, and there's a huge issue about fracking, and a lot of people were really angry about how they were ramming it through in New Brunswick. And of course, that was when the protests happened on a reserve. And
Yeah. But look at the way the media treats this issue. Here,
Yeah.
an election was just decided because people are opposed to fracking. Christy Clark tells us our future is fracking. We don't even hear it. The whole
No.
story is just kept. That's how the media works, to keep that story down.
Yeah.
Don't let people hear about it.
Yeah, it's problematic for sure. But anyway, it's sort of a good news story, you know. I'd like to just wrap up. Maybe we can also stay on a high note, because today I went looking for a good news story for us, and what I found was one good thing in Norway. Scientists were measuring the level of PCBs in the polar bears in Norway, and they've seen about a 50% drop in PCBs in polar bears in the last 10 years. So the burden of that chemical, although there's many others, is being reduced on polar bears and their population because they went into a concerted effort to reduce the production and the sale of PCBs. So it's an example of where we can actually do some things. We can make things better. It's not all bleak. We just have to get together and work on it.
Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
And thank you for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. This is segment 2. Our guest in this segment is Stephen Portman. Stephen is with TAPS, which is the Together Against Poverty Society. Unfortunately, you've been around for a long time, and it looks like you'll be with us in the future as well. Not the society, but the poverty. So, Stephen, maybe you can just start off by telling us what TAPS is.
Definitely. Together Against Poverty Society is in its 25th year, so we've been around for quite a long time, as you say. I think we're an interesting organization because we are an organization that, as you sort of alluded to, really firmly believes that the fact that we exist is a failure on the part of our community in really addressing the problem that's increasingly a crisis, which is poverty in the city of Victoria. So we started as a result of a situation where people living in poverty weren't able to access services or weren't able to get the help that they needed, weren't able to find a source of community and strength. And Together Against Poverty Society was sort of born around a kitchen table of like-minded individuals who felt that through organizing, we could bring voice to advancing the interests of people living in poverty. So that was 25 years ago, and we started with a one staff person, very small office at a desk, helping people in poverty navigate the welfare regime at the time. Flash forward 25 years to today, and unfortunately we've grown, as has the crisis of poverty, and we've grown along with it and changed quite a bit since our inception. It's in some ways for the better and in some ways maybe for the worse, but just as a result of the reflection of what's going on for people living in poverty, we've adapted. So today we're a staff of 6 people. We're on the corner of Fort and Quadra Street, right downtown, and we work in very specific areas of law. Fundamentally, we're a legal advocacy organization. So we work in specific areas of the law that intersect with people who live in poverty in fundamental ways. So I'll go through each project really quickly. For example, people on welfare or provincial disability assistance who are trying to get supports, have been denied supports, or being investigated by the Ministry of Social Development. We would represent those individuals in appeals against the government before the BC Employment and Assistance Appeal Tribunal or through the Ministry's own appeal mechanisms. Another project is our tenant advocacy project. And this is a project that defends low-income tenants that are in disputes with landlords. Any sort of challenge that exists under the Residential Tenancy Act will meet with that individual and represent their interest against the landlord. And most recently, just this past May, we've launched a new project, once again drawing on the changes that we've seen in the nature of poverty. We have a program designed to defend the interest of non-unionized workers, so the working poor of Victoria. Increasingly, these are marginalized workers who are temporary foreign workers, low or live-in caregivers, seasonal agricultural workers, people who are young workers, senior workers, workers who have challenges with their boss. So we're now helping people in filing complaints before the Employment Standards Branch and trying to negotiate or mediate settlements with their employers where these workers have been unjustly treated. And in doing this work, we're an organization that really strives to not be a charity per se, but to be an organization that is really just seeking justice on behalf of individuals and helping them get to that point of justice, and that is our motto. It is justice and not charity that is wanting in the world, and that is something that fundamentally guides the kind of organization we are in the work that we do.
Yeah. You know, there have been times in my life when I've been poor, and it's not easy. When you don't have any money and you're worried about how you're going to pay the rent and you're trying to keep a family going, and it's a choice literally between taking the bus or getting a cup of coffee, it's a tough way to live, and especially for people who can't get out of it, because for them there is just no way out. Our corporate society demands that the people at the bottom be living in poverty. And for those who are at the bottom, there's simply no way out. And you know, it's terrible, like to have to defend people in front of the Employment Standards Branch, because there are no employment standards. You know, it's the people who are working at tough jobs for low income are treated like dirt in this society. There's nothing to protect them. And if you have an employer who wants to treat you, who just wants to get everything they can out of you because that's how they're going to make the most money, then too bad for you if you don't like it. Yeah, you can quit, but there's maybe nowhere else to go that's any better. It's a ridiculous situation that all the people living in poverty and that you're in trying to help them out. And it's not completely unnecessary, which is the worst part.
Mm.
So what's the state of poverty in the CRD? I guess I just said part of it.
Yeah, I think, the question of the state of poverty in the Capital Regional District is one, and I don't need to get into facts and figures to demonstrate this, it's very visible. I think if you've lived in Victoria for the past 10 years, I think you've seen that it is getting worse. Poverty has become more in our faces, it's on our streets. We see lineups at our soup kitchens. We see nonprofit organizations springing up everywhere to try and put out the fires of the problems caused by poverty. I think we can really feel a shift in poverty in the Capital Regional District. I personally grew up in Nanaimo, and I'm 31 years old. When I grew up, there were a few people living in poverty. We had a soup kitchen. There were some challenges, certainly with poverty. Now I go back there and talk to friends who work in similar jobs to me, and it is incredible the growth of people relying on social services in that community, no longer provided by the government, but by the charitable and nonprofit sectors to try and help those people. The saddest thing about the the poverty that I've seen over the last 4.5 years is that these people that are living in poverty are getting sicker. So it's not just their poverty themselves, physically, emotionally and spiritually, they're degenerating to a really bad place. So bad, we had over 40 people in the street community in not this past summer, but the summer before, who passed away in a 2-month period. And that's an incredible amount of people for the city of Victoria, a population of roughly 90,000 people. The state of poverty in the Capital Regional District is incredibly acute, incredibly obvious, and incredibly unnecessary.
Yeah, to me that's the most important point. Poverty is deliberate. It's caused by the people who run this country. They deliberately cause it for whatever, I think various reasons. They like to destabilize our society, for one thing. And plus they like to take the money that we were giving to help people at the bottom, because that's what people want. They've just taken all that money and put it in their own pockets. Maybe, like, I've heard that it costs more to have a mat where somebody is sleeping on a concrete church basement floor, that costs more for a year than to build supportive housing and give people not only a place to live but supports as well. Is that? I mean, I'm quite sure that's the case, but
let's get into some numbers just for the people who are watching this program, because I think a lot of people don't understand what the costs of poverty are, what people living in poverty are living on. So a single individual who's deemed employable by the Ministry of Social Development receives a maximum of $610 per month to pay for their shelter costs, their food, their clothing, their transportation, toiletries, anything that they require. If you're homeless in the province of British Columbia, the maximum amount that you can receive is $235 per month. Average rental for a bachelor apartment in the city of Victoria is up around $690 by the latest numbers that we've received. So let's do the math. The basic level of income assistance immediately puts you in a place where you're unable to afford shelter at the average market cost in the city of Victoria. So immediately you're in a crisis situation. Now we talk about the costs of poverty, a mat in the floor in a basement, in a church, and the cost of staffing a shelter to have a place for these people to live. Would it be cheaper to just give people a decent place to live? Of course it would. A report by the CCPA, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, tried to put a number on the costs of poverty in British Columbia, which is an incredibly challenging thing to do. But they pegged it at about $8.2 billion to the economy of British Columbia when we talk about the back-end costs, when we're looking at increased policing, when we're looking at loss to the economy, when we're looking at the cost of health care. And remember that the vast majority of our police calls and our healthcare emergency calls are directly poverty related. If we look at our prison costs, the cost of policing poverty to the point of incarceration, these costs are immense and unnecessary and inhuman. A far more cost-effective method would be put policies in place employed by countries that have successfully lowered their poverty rate, which would be to provide a guaranteed livable income for people by which they could subsist at a livable level, where they could afford to have housing and where they didn't have to make difficult decisions about where they're going to earn their way in the world. And it's a bit of a no-brainer to me, and it's an idea that has cross-partisan support at the federal level. I'm one of the loudest advocates for a guaranteed living income as a Conservative senator, recently retired. And so solutions are there. And I often feel like you, Jack. I feel fatalist that the society has conspired against us all to ensure a permanent set of underclass people that have no way to pull themselves up, and there may be some truth to that. But I think there's people from all different walks of life, even people with wealth, who are, by their very standing in our class culture, guilty of creating the poverty crisis we have, but that do care to find solutions to deal with that poverty that they have in part created. So I think there's really good options out there. There's things that we could do if we had the political will to get there.
Yeah. A lot of political will comes from media. So you mentioned that there was a Conservative senator who was great on the issue of creating a guaranteed livable income. So just think, folks, of how much coverage in the media that senator and that story got compared to, for example, Mike Duffy, right? And that's how the media operates, to make sure that we never even think about these solutions because they're part of the problem. You wanted to talk about SLAP, Employment Standards Advocacy Project. Do you want to?
It's a long acronym. Employment Standards Legal Advocacy Project.
Okay.
This is something I'm personally very proud of, and for myself and for our organization. For a long time, the entire time I've worked it Together Against Poverty Society, we've been overwhelmed by being a nonprofit that is triage for poverty, but also by the number of people that we can't help in specific areas, and employees, low-income employees that are being exploited by their employers was always something that was really challenging for me to deal with emotionally, and it wasn't something that we could help them do because we didn't have funding in place, nor the expertise to effectively advocate on behalf of those individuals. You know, I often describe the nonprofit sector as, you know, 1,000 wise guys chasing the same nickel. So if you have it in your head that you want to build something that's going to fill a need like the one our organization saw to defend low-income workers, you have to go about trying to get some money together to do it. So we got a little bit of money from Literacy Victoria, who recently closed its doors a year and a half ago, to provide assistance to people just to complete a self-help kit for the Employment Standards Branch. Because of course, to file an Employment Standards complaint, you have to complete a 16-page written document. So if you're illiterate, employment standards really don't exist for you.
So we make this stuff up.
Yeah, so we took that money and just helped people who couldn't read file employment standards complaints. Then we received a little bit of additional funding from the Victoria Foundation to do a workshop on employment standards rights. So just the basic law, how it works. So I developed a presentation, and I made the rounds and presented in front of over 300 individuals and various different organizations on basic employment standards law. But what we saw time and time again through that year is what people really need is representation. They need someone to stand beside them, to take that fight on their behalf to that employer and to the government and be aggressive in representing their interests. And too often, without that representation, they're not there. So the problem is that advocacy or representing someone is not is sometimes not something that traditional funders are really excited about funding. Advocacy can be seen as political. It can be seen as a little bit aggressive. It's the language that I'm using. And it's perhaps not as feel-good as some other projects. So it's difficult to get funding for a project like the one that I wanted to do. So we turned to our natural, or what I thought would be a natural partner to try and fund something like that, and that was Labour. And Labour, you know, is a body that represents unionized workers, and you know, when but that fundamentally believes in a lot of ways in social justice for all, but they have their own struggles and their own challenges in winning gains and really just holding the line for their members. So when we approach Labour to say, you know, we've got a really important idea that we believe is fundamental to what you want to do, they were a bit reticent at first because they have so much on the go and donor fatigue like a lot of other funders. And so we were persistent. And I think that the representing non-unionized workers is where the union movement began. And I can, you know, through conversations and making connections and making friendships, the Victoria Labour Council really took a leadership role in saying, this is something we want to see funded, this is something we want to be a part of and we want to make happen. Couldn't do it alone, to do it in a way that's truly effective. And too often in the nonprofit sector, we're forced to try and find piecemeal solutions, and we wanted a really strong project that could really do the job right. So we went to the United Way, and the United Way, very bold, and came forward and partnered with Labour to come up to fund this project. And as far as I know, it's the first time that Labour and the United Way in British Columbia have got together to support a project of this nature. And we're really happy to see the relationship between the United Way and Labour grow in that respect, and so thankful to be able to do the work that we do given the financial support of those two organizations. I think it was a giant coup. I'm really proud that it happened, and really proud of the work that we've been doing in this project so far.
Well, Stephen, believe it or not, we're out of time. Good for Labour, good for the union movement, and good for the United Way for coming together to do what sounds to me too like very important work. I think the messages that you're putting out today are messages that all of us should be hearing more of, and I'm hoping that that's going to happen. So thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, and thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back to segment 3 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Wednesday, September the 24th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria. I'd like to thank once again the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes it all happen. Our guest in this segment is Sharon Noble of the coalition to stop smart meters.
That's right.
So when I say that, everybody knows what this is about, because to me, smart meters is a very important issue. We're going to talk about smart meters and how they cause fires, but before that, maybe just for a couple of minutes, you can give us the broad smart meter issue.
I think that most people are aware to some degree that there has been a lot of debate about the value of smart meters. They were implemented, the program was implemented without a whole lot of debate and at a great expense, financial expense. In many places, such as Germany, they've decided that they are not going forward with the program because the benefits do not justify the costs. Our government didn't give us that choice. They just went forward. As a result, it's being mandated that these things be put on our home. We're not given a choice, and they are transmitters. They're working wirelessly. And as with any other wireless device, they emit microwave radiation. And this is a radiation that has been classified as a to be carcinogen by the World Health Organization. The same classification as lead, mercury, HIV, and DDT. Yet we're not being given a choice. There are other problems. This is my major one, is the radiation issue and the health issue, because many people are going to suffer from this. But there are other issues as well. The billing issue. Many people have seen their bills increase by 2 or 3 times. We're looking at trying to find out why this is happening. There's evidence that some people in the States have corroborated that seem to indicate that it could be interference caused by other wireless devices, causing the meter to run fast. But we don't know that for sure. We're trying to look into it. There are other issues such as cybersecurity. This is something that's major. Agencies in the United States, such as the CIA, Homeland Security, the FBI, have all warned that this is something that's very, very dangerous. The way it's happening, Jack, is that all of the meters across British Columbia will feed into a grid that will be national and eventually will become international. We will be hooked up with every grid across the United States and Canada. And if something happens, for instance in New York, where there's an attack or an accident happens, our grid could come down. And CIA, FBI, and Homeland Security are warning that there's an attack that's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. The grid will be brought down. This is a natural place for terrorists or people who are unhappy with the system to attack. And they believe the works are already, it's happening already to a certain degree. And we could end up with some major issues where we lose electricity for prolonged periods of time. And there are no security issues that we know of that are being put into place to stop this yet. And it's going to be expensive. If we do it, it's going to be very, very expensive. Those are the primary issues. Many people are concerned about privacy as well. These meters are going to be gathering data not needed for billing. It's never been gathered before except by a warrant from the police. And when they add the second transmitter, which is a Zigbee chip, that will be communicating with, quote, smart appliances.
And that's worth mentioning because a lot of people don't know this. I think even the appliances that we're buying now, are these already in? Yeah, so your new fridge that you buy, the new stove, the new washer and dryer and everything else will have chips in them.
That's right.
That communicate on an ongoing basis with your smart meter. And why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a question that we've all been asking. Why do they want all this data? Now, of course, Hydro is saying that the data that they gather is only to be able to control the grid so that they can say, this place needs more electricity, this place has a surplus of electricity. Then why do they need to know that my refrigerator is 2 years old or that I'm using a certain appliance in my home? I believe that what the purpose is they're going to be selling the data to marketing places, to insurance companies, they're going to be using it for other purposes. I read an internal document. I wish I could find it. It was early on and I wasn't smart enough to keep it. But Hydro was advised that they will be making more money off the sale of our data than they will off the sale of electricity. This is quite disturbing. We have no control over it. We lose control of our data. And the data will be very, very specific. It will be able to tell when you're at home, when you're not at home, how many people are in your home. And this can be hacked. This is all going to be transmitted wirelessly. And any kid with a inkling of wanting to find out what's going on could hack your computer, could hack this smart meter. Our privacy is endangered. But one of the most recent concerns, and it's one that I think everybody, whether you're concerned about health, whether you're concerned about billing or privacy, you need to know that these smart meters are fire hazards. This is something that the government is denying and BC Hydro is denying. But I've gone through some of the records and I've discovered that we've had at least 28 fires and different types of failures. And there are more. I've just begun my research. And the government is consistently saying that this hasn't happened, even though I'm using their own records to get this data. The fires have occurred in other places. There have been more than 1,000 fires that have been documented in California. And they've happened with every type of meter. And they're happening, for instance, in Saskatchewan, they had a census meter. After 8 fires, they stopped the program, and the government is recalling all of the meters and are having them taken off the homes.
So is Saskatchewan going back to the old meters?
Right now they are, yes, they're putting the analogs back on. Whether they will stick with that, we don't know. The analogs are safe. They work well. They have a very long life expectancy, so they're much cheaper than the smart meters. So there's really no justification for not keeping them, except for the corporations like them. But these fires are happening everywhere, and other governments are responding. Portland, Oregon has stopped their program after 12 fires. Florida, some areas in Florida have stopped their programs. In Nevada, just today, there's been a call for a major investigation after 26 fires. We've had 28 fires that I know of, and I know there have been more because I'm just starting, and our government is doing nothing but denying it. There are many, many reasons why these fires are occurring. One, they went the cheap route for installation. They hired Corex, who hired people straight off the street, gave them approximately 50 hours training, and put them out there with a daily quota to fill to exchange meters and do a job that normally is only done by a qualified electrician or linesman. And these people did not know what they were doing, and they've damaged the meter bases in many instances, and this has led to fires. I've got documents from BC Hydro that document that this has happened over and over and over again, and usually what happens is that Hydro denies that it's their responsibility, and they say that it was the meter base or the home wiring system, and the homeowner is responsible for the costs.
And are they getting away with that?
Yes, yes, they are.
So let's say a fire starts at a smart meter. Hydro says it's got nothing to do with the smart meter, it's the base. And is there an inspection? Is there anybody else, the police or the fire department, come into play and deal with this issue?
There should be. Right now the laws, it's the Electricity Standards Act and the Electricity Safety Act, says that every fire is supposed to be reported to the fire commissioner, the provincial fire commissioner. It doesn't say only large fires or fires where people get hurt. It says every fire is supposed to be reported. It's not happening. I'm saying, so far I've requested about 50 reports from the fire commissioner, and approximately 1/2 of them are not there. The fire commissioner is having to go back to the fire department to see if they've got a report. Even going back for 2 years, the fire reports are not there.
So you mean you know of a place where a fire has occurred?
Yes.
You go to the fire commissioner and you say, I want to see that report.
That's right.
And he says, I don't have the report.
Exactly.
So even though the law says every fire has to be reported, it's not happening.
That's right.
Is that standard practice, or is that only with these smart meter fires?
I don't know. I suspect it's standard. And why I suspect it's standard is because the fire commissioner's funding was cut some years ago. During Campbell's government, they cut the funding to many agencies. And I believe they're short of staff. And the fire departments, I spoke with one fire chief who said they're only paid $13 to complete a very detailed report. And it's not high priority. Unless someone asks them for it, they put it on the back burner and it just may not get done. What I'm doing, and a couple of people are helping me, We're reading every newspaper article that says that there's been a fire, looking at every TV station, and anything that's suspicious, where there seems to be a fire that starts in a garage, on the back side of a house, or they mention the smart meter, we've made note of it. And I've got many, many fires. And then what I've been doing since February is asking for fire reports from the fire commissioner. They don't have any coding for smart meter fires. I asked them a couple of years ago about this, and they said no. There haven't been any fires with meters, so they haven't had any need for a code. Now, I believe that goes back to the analogs. The analogs are very, very safe, and therefore there have been so few fires with the analogs that they haven't had to have a code. But this is carrying on with the smart meter. Now there are smart meter fires. And what's interesting is that the fire reports are not actually credible. I don't know if you saw in Langford last month, there was a fire on Souk Road. It was on Czech News. Czech News spoke with the fire chief as it was happening. And he said, I got here and I went over there. The fire department is 1 block from the home. By the time he got there, he said the flames were shooting out of the smart meter. And he said the smart meter was on fire. The smart meter is plastic, it's combustible, and it probably spread from there. What did the fire report say? That it was a cigarette in a planter that ignited the fire. There was no evidence of that in the Czech News. They showed the house. I went over there shortly thereafter to take some pictures myself. There was nothing there to be seen. It was the smart meter and all the damage immediately around the meter and up. But yet the official report says that it was caused by a cigarette in a planter. Okay, I'll buy that. Let's say it was a cigarette in the planter. There was no damage done above wherever a planter would have been. But because the meter is plastic and combustible, if there was fire underneath it, the meter would have caught fire. There's a lithium battery inside. I don't know if you know what lithium batteries are.
No.
They're combustible. They're very combustible. They've brought down airplanes. There's a warning on the battery inside the smart meter saying that it cannot be exposed to high temperatures because it will explode. If there's been a fire anywhere near that smart meter, I mean, in a planter, it should have been fairly well contained. But that house was destroyed.
Have you ever spoken to anybody who lived somewhere where there's been a fire from a smart meter and seen what they had to say?
Yes, yes. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult because they're told, for instance, there was a woman up in Nelson. Her entire house burned down. She was walking down the hall, fire shot through an outlet in her son's bedroom. That's very unusual. She grabbed her son, her cell phone, and ran out of the house. By the time that she finished calling, she said she could see the fire following the line and the wiring around her house. She saw it start at the meter, and it was following the line around her house. The fire report said that the source of the meter, or the source of the fire, could not be determined because the potential igniter had been destroyed. The meter had been destroyed, so there was absolutely no evidence. The same thing happened with a family in Port Coquitlam. There was a brand new home. It hadn't even been lived in yet. It had just finished to lockdown. The electricity had been inspected the week before. The smart meter had been put in, the wiring was complete, and the inspection had been done. They were now ready to start drywalling, and a fire started. They were called, and the fire department was there immediately. She spoke with the inspector as he watched it, and he says, I think it started at the smart meter. There's nothing else there. The next morning they came, it was gone. The meter was gone. They don't know whether hydro took it or if it was just destroyed. But the fire report reads undetermined, even though they ruled out every other source.
Now, personally, would our provincial government hide the fact that fires are being caused by smart meters? I would think they would do it. Of course they do it. I mean, I have no doubt they do.
There's a lot of money involved here. A lot of money. First, they spent a lot of money. Plus, there's a lot of political involvement. If you read some of the connections, you know, with Dave Emerson and a lot of other people who are on the board of Corex and are on the board of Itron. There's a lot of money to be made here.
Maybe you can just mention who Dave Emerson is.
Well, I don't remember exactly. It was before my time, but he was in, you know, he's been a political animal for a long time, and he's now out of the politics, the provincial politics, and he's on the board of these corporations. The fact is that this is a worldwide issue,
Yes.
and if we show that meters are fire hazards, there's going to be a heck of a lot of money lost. I also think that there has to be some serious investigation about why things are being stifled. You know, this government has forbidden the BC Utilities Commission, which is the regulator, from investigating any of this. I've sent the information to the BC Utilities Commission and told them that this is their duty, and they said no. They've been instructed not to get involved with any aspect of the smart meter program.
Pathetic government. I mean, it's pathetic and undemocratic. It's a disgrace.
Yep.
The media, I'm sure, isn't going to cover it because they're part of the same cover-up. This is pathetic. But remember something very important that was said here, which is that Germany is, to this point in time, not going ahead with this, right?
They've stopped because of the cost-benefit analysis. Other places have stopped it because of safety problems with fires. Other governments are looking at this more carefully.
We're like the worst in the world. Here, it's anything goes. I mean,
Yep.
other countries say it doesn't make sense, but Christy Clark doesn't care. And the NDP is no better. They support it. It's
Nobody's looking at it. In fact, if you go back historically and see how we got into this jam, it's really quite interesting. In 2008, Fortis submitted an application for the smart meter program to the BC Utilities Commission, and it laid out the program exactly the way it's being implemented now, and it said it was going to be partnering with Hydro. The BC Utilities Commission did due diligence, looked at it and said, no, we're not moving forward. It's too expensive, it can't be justified, and the technology is so new that it's going to probably cost a heck of a lot more, and it's probably not going to last very long. So they turned it down. So what happened? The Clean Energy Act was written. In 2010, the Liberal government said that the BC Utilities Commission had absolutely no authority for oversight for the smart meter program. They wrote them out because they'd already said no. That's democracy
Sharon,
in action.
yeah, we're out of time. That's democracy in action. There is so much corruption in this province, in this country, that we, the citizens, have to stop it. Thanks for watching Citizens Forum.